For tuning in. Now, Chief Economist at Econometrix, Azar Jammine, is with us right now to discuss his views on President Cyril Ramaphosa's inauguration speech and what in it may mean anything, if anything at all, for us fiscally. So thanks so much for coming in this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So firstly, your impressions of that speech, and do you think there was any sort of impetus contained therein that would push this economy upwards?
You see, unfortunately, there was no detail, but we're aware of that because there's a lot of horse trading that's going to be ahead. But also, the challenges are absolutely enormous. But at the same time, there was an element of gravitas and determination, and he made a point that he highlighted the weaknesses of the economy in terms of high levels of unemployment, in terms of disparities, and made a commitment. He promised, he said, I promise I'm going to work on those, and I promise I'm going to work for the people, and not for myself alone. So I don't know that in that kind of inaugural speech he could say very much more. We have to wait until the State of the Nation address next month to get a little more detail in that regard, hopefully. But clearly there are major structural impediments to economic growth, and Ramaphosa's got to tackle them. He hinted at one, and that is that people have been interfering with institutions for their own personal benefit, and that means he is determined to try and fight corruption.
So this, of course, is going to be the second State of the Nation address. We had one a few months ago. How much of a difference can we expect to hear in the next State of the Nation address from what we heard a few months ago?
You may not be able to hear too much more, except many will feel that Ramaphosa will have a little more freedom to do and to say exactly what he wants without worrying about his opponents within the ANC. Others will say, no, but those factions are still there. But on the whole, I think he will have an element of freedom. He's got a mandate that he didn't have in February.
So let's assume for the moment that he has this undiluted freedom to do what he needs to do to get this economy growing. What should he do?
There's a number of legs to it. The first and foremost, he needs to make quite clear to the country at large and almost make it a passionate plea that we need to improve education, skills development, and our ability in mathematics and science, or else we will just be left behind as the country enters into the fourth industrial revolution and the 5G revolution.
If I may just interject, I'm sitting here as a South African, and if I hear that one more time, I'm not buying it. I've heard the story over and over and over again before the Ramaphosa administration. We've been hearing this forever and a day. So why would we want to hear that again as opposed to actually getting solutions, concrete solutions to the problem?
Well, this is a concrete solution because there is evidence to show a very high correlation between level of education and employability.
But we know this.
Yeah.
We've known this.
The second issue that he's got to tackle, and that's why they all go together, is to attack the industrial relations environment. At the moment, due to labor laws and due to perceptions of excessive inequality in the workplace, you've got huge tensions between trade unions and employers, and a reluctance by employers to want to take on workers on a full-time basis.
So what's the president going to do in this regard? How is he going to change that particular landscape?
He has to start interfering and exerting more pressure on trade unions and on employers to just restrict some of the exorbitant executive pay that we see, and trade unions to actually be willing to compromise in terms of restricting some of their demands. Otherwise, you're just going to have a continuation of a reluctance to take on workers. I mean, the very sad part about the latest labour statistics is that once again what we saw over the past year, especially in the formal sector, is a decline of 1.2% in the number of jobs. Yet the economy grew. It didn't grow much, but it did grow. So why are we not creating jobs commensurate to economic growth?
And this is quite an historic problem that we have faced. Even at a time when our economy was growing at more than 5%, even then we struggled to really create jobs in this country. So where do you think the problem lies?
Well, there are many areas where the problem lies. I say at the heart is not enough of South Africans are sufficiently educated to add value, and skilled as well, to add value to the economy. And we have to actually deal with that. Otherwise, you know, there won't be the people to do the job work, to produce the goods. We'll be reliant ever more, as we are at the moment, on imports of goods. And that is negative for our balance of payments and for job creation.
And of course it is, as many would say, a ticking time bomb. 27.6%, that's the rate of unemployment as per the narrow definition. Expanded definition looking more like 40%. Then more importantly, youth unemployment, and it's sitting currently at 55.2%, and we're told if we look at the expanded definition in that regard, we're also looking more like 70%.
No,
we cannot sustain that.
It is unsustainable. In fact, what is remarkable is that it has continued for so long without social revolution in the country. We are seeing protests arising left, right and centre, but not in the manner that one might have actually anticipated. These are huge problems. The other one, of course, is state-owned enterprises, and that's one area where you could have seen a lot of employment creation. At the end of the day, what is drastically needed is more investment, but no one is going to invest if they don't have confidence in being able to sort out a lot of the problems that we've been outlining.
And that is the point, isn't it? Because who's going to invest in Eskom? Who's going to invest in Transnet? Who's going to invest in any of our major state-owned enterprises with the problems that they currently have?
Absolutely, but business is willing to take risks often to make a big profit. And they've got to be presented with those opportunities. There's no one better to do that than President Ramaphosa. He's been starting on that score. And the only hope that we lie is that if he is seen to be taking steps to improve education skills, the labour market environment, to reduce the concentration of power in South African business, if he is seen to be engaging the private sector in a way that his predecessors have not, I think little by little, if he says the right things and does the right things, that in itself might start encouraging businesses to want to take the chance to actually make a bit of money by beginning to invest again. And that's the big hope that we have, that this can start building a momentum of its own over time. It's not going to come within the next year or even two. But if we look 3 years out, if he starts from now, we could start seeing an upward trajectory.
But of course, again, the skepticism prevails because we saw the summits that the president held as he came into office. And if we track as per the promises that were made at the time of these various summits that were held, once again, we've fallen behind. We're not tracking the sort of numbers. We're not seeing the promises being brought to fruition. So in the end, you know, is it fair that we are still skeptical of whether business is willing to do what they say they're going to do?
I think it is fair. I wouldn't necessarily blame those businesses themselves. There was a lot of PR, a PR exercise. Many, even at that time, stated that a lot of that investment was based on decisions that had already been made. It was in the plan already. But certainly the president's desire to have $100 billion worth of investment over the next 5 years, you know, he needs to just keep talking that up, and we have to start seeing a little bit of... a lot has to be done in terms of starting to free up the workplace as well, and not restrict and exclude people who are perfectly capable of contributing towards improving the skill set from actually being able to take up those positions.
And we can't conclude this conversation without talking about Eskom. We saw the CEO, Phakamani Hadebe, resigning on Friday. Seems this job is just way too stressful. And of course, there's speculation. You spoke about how the president, would need to convince business, how business would be willing to invest if there was, sufficient incentive for them to do so. So what's going on at Eskom and the Maria Ramos factor as well? Is she the person who's going to come in and oversee this unbundling process as per the rumors?
The president has to certainly clarify the whole ground as far as Eskom goes. He has already intimated that there is going to be a restructuring of the organization. He has to just keep at it and actually give us a new vision of where he sees that going. At the same time, from an operational point of view, the resignation of the CEO speaks to too much interference in the management of the company by the government. The government, when Hadebe wanted to restrict pay increases, for example, for all Eskom workers, the Minister of Public Enterprise, Pravin Gordhan, came in and said, no, you've got to give them pay increase as well. When you start off like that, with that kind of interference from the shareholder onto the management, there's very little that the management can do to try and operate this thing back onto its feet. So government has to restructure, but then let the leaders that it has appointed to run the company run those independently the way they see fit, and not to keep interfering from its own perspective.
Well, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much to Dr. Azar Jammine, Chief Economist at Econometrix, giving us, some of his perspectives on President Cyril Ramaphosa and what he should do to grow the economy. Let's take a break here on Morning Live.